Throughout the histories of Arda, there have been many prominent characters that have touched the annals of history, be that for good or for evil, or in large or small ways. Some characters affect the passage of time so subtly that it might as well be as though they never existed, whilst others shape the very face of the world with their will. One such creature as this is Gollum, the wretch bent on broken by the ring, playing a vital part in its eventual delivery to the side of the light in the War of the Ring, and played a role in the ultimate defeat of the Dark Lord Sauron. Greetings all, I am your guide, the Archivist. Today I will look at the misery of Smeagol, or Gollum, his life and contribution to the passage of the ring to Frodo, and ultimately his demise. Appearance and character. Gollum is always portrayed as being a very good survivalist, with a keen eye and a quick mind to get himself out of trouble, as well as to catch a meal, mostly fish, being able to catch them in most lights and deep water. He fished around the Misty Mountains underground lake in almost complete darkness for centuries before he came across Bilbo Baggins. He was known to eat almost anything that was livable and edible, and could stomach anything raw or uncooked. He was also very good at not being seen, and was an excellent wayfarer, finding his way across all manner of terrain. There has been some debate over the size of Gollum, as it's never been explicitly mentioned and varies somewhat depending on the source, but it's generally accepted that he's the size of a medium-sized hobbit, just a touch larger than Sam. He's also described as being sallow, sickly colour, bone white or yellow in nature with a dark complexion. Gorbag and Shagrat describe him as a dark fellow, which would also support this description. In a manuscript written to guide illustrators to the appearance of the characters, Tolkien explained this by saying that Gollum had pale skin but wore dark clothes and was often seen in poor light. The Hobbit states he has pockets, in which he keeps a tooth-sharpening rock, goblin teeth, wet shells and a scrap of batwing. Even though he seems to be depicted only in a loincloth, it seems as though he had pockets and some form of clothing. Powers. Whilst having no legendary or specific powers or abilities, Gollum lived an extremely long extended life, far beyond his nature, by the effects of possessing the One Ring. Smeagol was about 589 years old when he died, a remarkable age for a creature that was once a hobbit, but he had been deformed and twisted in body and mind by the corruption of the ring. By the end of his life, he was truly twisted in mind and in nature. His chief desire was to repossess the ring that had enslaved him, and he pursued it for many years after Bilbo Baggins found it in Gollum's cave within the Misty Mountains. His determination and sheer willpower to repossess the One Ring, especially after being so badly twisted and maimed, could be testament to his willpower, or perhaps the intent hold of the ring had over him. During his centuries under the ring's influence, he developed a sort of dissociative identity disorder. Smeagol, his good personality, still vaguely remembering things like friendship and love, whilst Gollum, his bad and prevailing personality, was a slave to the ring and would kill anyone who tried to take it. This is seen throughout the films and books, two people inside Gollum or Smeagol fighting for control, with the One Ring between them causing confusion and distress. The true misery of Smeagol came from this tortured existence. Origins. According to the archives, Smeagol was once a Storish hobbit, born in T8, 2430. Smeagol spent the early years of his life living with his family run by his grandmother. Around the year 2463, Smeagol came upon the One Ring after Sauron, Isildur and Deagol. Deagol was his cousin, and on Smeagol's birthday they went fishing in the Gladden Fields. It was there that Deagol found the gold ring in the water after being pulled out of their boat by a large fish. Almost immediately Smeagol craved the One Ring, maligned by its power, demanding it as a birthday present. When Deagol refused, Smeagol promptly flew into a range and fought with Deagol over the ring, choking him to death and taking the ring as his own. Smeagol was quickly corrupted further by the ring and banished by his people. Turned by his grandmother out of her hole, he was forced to find a home in a cave in the Misty Mountains in around TA 2470. The ring's malign influence twisted his hobbit body as well as his mind and prolonged his life far beyond its natural limits. He called it his precious or his birthday present, the latter as a replacement in his mind for killing Deagol. He lived in the Misty Mountains for over 400 years, living on raw blind fish, which he caught from his small boat, bats, and occasionally stray orcs. Gollum even made a song about raw fish, which is, "The rocks and stones, they're like old bones all bare of meat," that he used to as a riddle for Bilbo, and would much later sing to Frodo Baggins in a longer version. He found Hobbit and elven food repulsive. The Third Age. In July T8 2941, during the company's quest to Erebor, the Hobbit Bilbo Baggins stumbled upon Gollum and the underground lake that he lived, finding and taking the ring. Gollum had lost the ring squabbling with an old goblin in the network of caves leading to the lake, and it is commonly believed the ring decided to leave Gollum as it had its own will entirely. As Gandalf says later, it left him to try and get back to its owner Sauron, and thought this the best course. After their riddle game, considered to be one of the most iconic moments in all of Tolkien's works, during which Gollum was unaware of his loss, Gollum refused to show Bilbo the promised way out and plotted to murder him. However, upon realization that his ring had been lost, the true answer to Bilbo's riddle became clear. "What have I got in my pocket?" breaking into a rage and then began to chase him out of the tunnels. Bilbo inadvertently stumbled across the ring's power of invisibility as he ran, allowing him to follow Gollum back to the entrance of the cave. There, Bilbo at first thought to kill Gollum, but was overcome with pity, and he jumped over him to escape. Search for the ring. Driven to madness by his loss, Gollum eventually decided to leave and look for the ring stolen by Bilbo a few years past from this event. He made his way south to Mordor, where all evil was being drawn to at this time. Discovering the secret stairs of Cirith Ungol, located near Minas Morgul, he was captured on his return, taken to the dungeons of Barad-dûr, and forced to reveal to Sauron under intense torture what he knew of the ring, another iconic scene and moment which would lead to more events pivotal in the War of the Ring later on. Gollum was then freed, as Sauron had learned all he needed from him and sensed that he might draw out the ring. He was then subsequently caught by Aragorn, then interrogated by Gandalf, who placed him in the care of the Sylvan elves living in Thranduil's kingdom of Mirkwood. Assisted by orcs, he escaped them, and set off looking for the Shire. He passed through Moria, but could not make it out of the doors of Durin. Seemingly, he then just waited there until he got lucky when the Fellowship of the Ring passed through. However, it's commonly considered he may have felt the passing of the ring due to his affinity with it, or with Frodo. The War of the Ring. Gollum's biggest contribution to the annals of history surely comes during the War of the Ring, where he joins Frodo on his journey towards Mount Doom. Gollum met and started following the Fellowship of the Ring into the Moria area, and was spotted and heard by Frodo on several occasions moving through the shadows. He had been waiting here, seeking the ring. On January 15th, 3019, the Fellowship was divided when Gandalf disappeared while fighting the Balrog. Gollum continued trailing the remaining members. It is unknown how he crossed the broken bridge of Khazad-dûm, but he came with them to Lorien without their knowing. Gollum followed the boats down the Anduin, floating on a log, to Nen Hithuin, and pursued Frodo and Sam across the Emyn Muil when they struck out on their own towards Mordor. Gollum continued to follow them overland until a confrontation where Frodo noticed and subdued him, threatening to kill him with Sting, the very blade that Gollum had seen on Bilbo so many years ago. However, being merciful, Frodo made Smeagol swear to help them, an agreement with an oath with One Ring itself. Gollum started to lead them to Mordor. Through many trials and tribulations, they made it to the Black Gate of Mordor with Gollum's help. It's important to note that the misery that Smeagol felt was not just at the hands of the ring, but also what it had done to his mind, splitting him into two people trapped within himself. Frodo brought out the old Smeagol personality in Gollum with his kindness, which is why he went to such great lengths to help Frodo and Sam reach Mount Doom. They also had a connection because of the One Ring, and perhaps they were all influenced without their knowledge. However, Gollum always pressed on Smeagol's mind, and the presence of the ring began to distort him as time went on. When the Black Gate was reached and found to be well guarded, Gollum convinced them not to go that way, saying that they would be caught and Sauron would regain the ring. Gollum said he would lead them south, where he knew another entrance into Mordor, in which Frodo complied, despite Sam's suspicions. Frodo and Sam were caught by Faramir, and Gollum followed them. When Frodo allowed Faramir to briefly take Gollum prisoner, however, he felt betrayed, allowing the Gollum personality to take total control. Faramir found out the place that Gollum was taking them was called Cirith Ungol. He then warned Frodo and Sam of the evil of that place, not trusting Gollum at all. Frodo, Sam and Gollum left Faramir and began crossing the Morgul Vale and proceeded to climb the stairs of Cirith Ungol, in the border mountains of the Efelduath, the Mountains of Shadow, out all the surrounding perimeter of Morgul. Gollum visited the great spider Shelob, child of Ungoliant, because he was planning to betray the hobbits by turning them to Shelob for food and then take the ring for himself. It's extremely impressive to remark that Gollum managed to actually form an alliance with Shelob, as she would largely be considered a force of nature more than a reasonable creature, showing again his incredibly keen mind and remarkable willpower. Upon his return he was conflicted, stroking Frodo's hair. However, Sam's mistrusting words sealed the fate of Smeagol's persona Repentance, and Gollum led them into the trap. Just as Faramir warned them, Gollum's betrayal of his oath ultimately led to his undoing, for Frodo and Sam escaped from her lair and also Cirith Ungol. They came against all odds to the fiery volcano Mount Doom. Gollum followed them all the way, seeking a chance to surprise them and take the ring. When Frodo and Sam had almost reached their destination, he attacked, but failed to get the ring. Sam, who had hated Gollum on sight, tried to bring himself to kill him, but he relented out of sheer pity and disgust, turning his back on the beaten but still wily creature. His final fate. Gollum's final fate was entwined with the ring at Mount Doom, as it always should have been. Frodo was standing on the edge of the cracks of Doom, but, unable to destroy the ring, claimed it for himself and put it on. Then Gollum attacked the hobbits again. Gollum knocked out Sam with a rock whilst Frodo was invisible, and then, tracking his footprints, jumped on Frodo's shoulders. The two fought and Gollum ultimately bit Frodo's finger off with the ring on it. The long-standing prophecy of Bilbo sparing Gollum was fulfilled here, as Frodo was unable to destroy the ring himself. However, the weary and broken Gollum, so fulfilled with finally having possession of the ring back, lost his balance and fell into the lava below, destroying himself and the ring. If Bilbo had killed Gollum all those years ago, Frodo would have been powerless with Sauron knowing exactly where he was and unable to destroy the ring himself. Years after Gollum's death, Frodo would forgive him, as Gandalf had pointed out to him that Gollum was not an evil entity deserving death, but a pitiful being unnaturally and irreversibly bound to the ring's will, and that Frodo would have almost certainly suffered a similar fate had he kept the ring. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the subscribe and like Waystowns down below. Nu luego vanidvan. Until we meet again.